Saravanan sir, is everything all right? Shall we begin the session? It's exactly 6.
Yes, sir. We can begin, sir.
Yes. The most respected speaker of the day, Dr. P. Bhupati, Assistant Professor, Department of English Studies, School of Social Sciences and Humanities, Central University of Tamil Nadu, Tiruvallur. The heads of the department, Professor N. Arundas, Dr. J. Mary Janif, faculty members of the department, and participants across the nation. Good evening to you all. Hearty welcome to the 5th day of the FTP on interdisciplinary research and English language and literature. Let me now invite Dr. Joy Christina Jayakudi, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Sacred College, to introduce the resource person of the day. Over to you, madam.
Yes. Good evening, all of you. Sir, am I audible, sir?
Yes, ma'am. Kindly proceed.
Oh, yes, sir. Most respected Reverend Dr. P. Praveen Peter, our rector, Reverend Dr. D. Maria Anthony Raj, our principal, respected Mr. N. Aruldas, Head Department of English, Shift 1, Dr. Mary Janif, Head Department of English, Shift 2, Dr. Julian, Head of the Research Wing, Mr. Madan Kumar and Mr. Saravanan, the organizers, dear colleagues, dear resource person, Dr. Bhupati, enthusiastic participants, a pleasant good evening to one and all. It is my great pleasure to introduce today's distinguished resource person, Dr. Bhupati. Dr. Bhupati is an assistant professor in the Department of English, School of Social Science and Humanities, Central University of Tamil Nadu, Tiruvallur. He also serves as the coordinator of the Enabling Unit for Persons with Disabilities at the university. In addition, he is an expert member of the State Welfare Board for People with Disabilities, Government of Tamil Nadu. Hyderabad, with his doctoral research focusing on Palestinian refugee life narratives. Prior to joining the Central University of Tamil Nadu, he served as a faculty member at Aligarh Muslim University for 3 years. His areas of teaching and research include refugee literature, life writing studies, literary and cultural disability studies, and cultural studies. He has published extensively in reputed international journals such as Life Writing, Biography, Comedy Studies, Peace Review, Journal of Graphic Novels and Comics, Short Fiction in Theory and Practice, and Literature and Aesthetics, and has contributed chapters to edited volumes published by Routledge and Peter Lang, among others. His recent publications in 2025 address themes of refugeedom, childhood under occupation, and disability humor as cultural resistance, published by leading academic presses such as Taylor and Francis and Intellect Books. Dr. Bhupati has received international research funding from institutions including the New Literary Observer, Moscow, the European University at St. Petersburg, and the German Historical Institute, Warsaw, enabling him to present his work at global academic forums. He was also a visiting professor at the University of Siedlec, Poland, under the Erasmus Fellowship in June 2025. He has delivered invited lectures across universities and colleges in India and abroad, particularly in the field of disability studies and refugee literature. We are honored to have you, sir, such a committed scholar, teacher, and advocate with us today. Please join me in warmly welcoming Dr. Bhupati. Let us sit back, relax, enjoy the learning. Thank you very much.
Thank you, madam, for your wonderful introduction. Sir, now the floor is open to you. We welcome you, sir.
Uh, right. So, am I audible, sir?
Yes, sir, you're audible,
Yeah.
sir.
Thank you.
Yes.
My dear friend and one of the coordinators of this wonderful FDP, Professor Madan Kumar. He is my brother also. He was my senior at Pondicherry University, good friend of mine. Heads of the department, Professor Aruldas and Professor Mary Janet, principal of this wonderful college, faculty members from the Department of English, Sacred Arts College, dear participants, good evening to everyone who have joined us online. Today, as it was introduced, I'll be, discussing disability studies with you, such a very vast area. I'll try my best to give you, certain basic understanding of what is disability and how disability studies emerged, and of course certain take-home points or topics for your research and for further deliberation. Uh, at the outset, I also thank Madam for like very sort of widely taking time to introduce me with all sorts of things. I'm just trying to do whatever I could do in a bit, so, right. So we'll get into the discussion.
Sir, excuse me, sir.
Yeah, am I not audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible, but
Yeah.
slightly it's feeble, sir. Could you slightly?
Yeah, is it clear now?
Yeah, yes, sir. Now it's
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, okay. Right.
Thank you.
So, yeah, thank you. If you look at disability studies, it is one of the very important marginalized discourses that emerged, in early 1990s. To understand its origin, its development, and its contemporary engagements, we need to know what actually sort of, was the foundation of its, development, its origin, right? So, disability studies, in a way, began from disability rights movement. So, this is something that I want to, make it very clear at the outset itself, because any marginalized studies, if you look at it, be it as Dalit studies, refugee studies, or LGBTQ plus studies, or even feminist studies, right, or block studies, any studies, if you look at it, they all began from political movement, social movement, right? Similarly, disability studies also in a way began from disability rights movement, or rather it was heavily influenced by disability rights movement. And as I said, it's a very sort of vast area, but I'll definitely walk you through certain remarkable sort of achievements and points to sort of remember, to understand the origin, development, and contemporary engagement of disability studies. So, in the Industrial Revolution period, disability or disability identity was seen as a most problematic identity. Before that, we had agrarian revolution, agrarian period, that is before, let's say, 18th century. From early 19th century onwards, we started having certain, changes or influences that sort of, in a way, propelled by industrial revolution, propelled by the mushrooming or onset of many industries catering to different, commercial needs, needs of people in all different sectors, particularly in the 19th century. And 19th century is a very, very crucial, period to understand all sets of identities, all sets of, sort of knowledge production, in different disciplines. Similarly, in the case of disability also, So 19th century was a very crucial sort of a moment, a period which produced binary relations. So what post-structuralism or postmodernism talks about, the idea of binary power relations. In fact, it began from structuralism onwards. Post-structuralism problematizes it. But the binary power relation with regard to disability began in the 19th century. And that's when the identity started receiving epistemological intervention or discursive intervention, or to put it more simply, epistemological, sort of engagement, knowledge-oriented engagement. Many, deliberations were held on what is disability and all sorts of things. Not in academia, so to say, but in the administrative level, but in the societal level, and more so in terms of the terrain, the field of economics. Like the bigger states were, especially the European states, were more bothered about what to do with the considerable number of people who were disabled. Right. So that's when you find Foucault talking about the asylums. Asylums were created to house feeble-minded people, disabled people, the homosexuals, people with illness, all sorts of things. I don't want to go into it. I think it is suffice to sort of say that 19th century created binary power relations with abled and disabled as that of the other power relations, like rich versus poor, and what do you call male versus female, more eloquently, more problematic way rather, and also like urban versus rural. So all sorts of binary power relations in the 20th century got consolidated in terms of, I would say, academic epistemological intervention. And in the case of people with the disabilities, it was even more I was intriguing, problematic, because till the beginning of 20th century, the European uh, the European countries or the global northern countries had only people with the congenital disabilities, that is, people who were born with the disabilities. But the two world wars created large number of people with acquired disabilities, and that's where the states, that is, European states, including US, I think a broader perspective, we can perhaps say states from global northern countries started adapting different approach altogether to understand people with disabilities, because the number of people who were made disabled in the two world wars, both the civilians, that included both civilians as well as the veteran militants, the soldiers, it was huge. That in a way sort of outnumbered people who had acquired congenital disability. So the states could not, in a way, have same sort of approach in terms of dealing with people with, acquired disabilities and dealing with people with congenital disabilities. And more so, particularly in 1930s and 40s, people started, especially people who were disabled by the First World War and the ongoing Second World War, people started in a way protesting, particularly in early 1940s. There were in US itself, there were more than 150 disabled war veteran organizations started by disabled war veterans to fight for their fundamental rights to access the public building, because the war veterans were expected to come to the army offices to receive their pension. And they started saying, or rather demanding the government, particularly the US government, that you sort of built, war memorials for people who lost their lives in the war, particularly the soldiers. And you started celebrating, hailing, remembering, worshipping those war memorials. What about us? We became disabled, not that, we were born with the disabilities. Rather, we became disabled because we fought for the nation. It is because of the nation that we became disabled. This was the argument put forth by disabled people, this disabled war veterans in US and European countries. And on the other hand, we all know, toward the end of 19th century, the field of medicine, particularly allopathy medicine, got expanded. Surgery was introduced, and more so, there was a movement called eugenics, racial purification. Francis Galton was the one who sort of popularized it, right? And it had a very huge impact on the lives of people with the disabilities because, particularly in European country, the European countries wanted to completely cleanse of people with disabilities because increasingly they were becoming burden on the state, right? And and due to which the states wanted to completely eliminate people with the disabilities. In by 1930, early 1930s, or shall we say more precisely toward the late 1920s, disabled holocaust was actually sort of planned. That is to say, the eugenics was evolved in medicine as a sort of a euthanasia method, a method in terms of mass killing people with the disabilities. It began in Germany, right? And more so in early 1930s and mid 1930s, Hitler uh, sort of asked in his Third Reich, asked, his officials to start headquarters, like the hospitals for disabled in the uh, province headquarters. And he sort of instructed his medical staff to go to each and every house and collect the disabled people. Later, when they got 100, 200 disabled people, they were all put in single room and sort of killed with poisonous gas. That was later used as very convenient method of mass killing, doing genocide on Jews. But the Holocaust actually began with the disabled people, that we call it as disabled Holocaust. This was one side going in terms of medical intervention. On the other hand, you find the states were providing certain relief measures in terms of monetary benefit to disabled war veterans. And they started protesting that offices were not accessible, roads were not accessible, all sorts of things. And by 1950s, we all know that idea of UDHR, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, brought out by United Nations, uh, served as a very, very significant document, for all sorts of marginalized people. First, the document was well used by, I would say, people with the civil rights, like people who were part of civil rights movement, the slaves, the black people, and others, in US and Europe. And also the Stonewall movement, the LGBT movement, the LGBT people started using that UDHR, demanding the government to treat them, with human rights, with universal human rights. We are all humans, and we should be given certain fundamental rights. Our rights should be respected, irrespective of the fact that what kind of sexuality we have, what kind of color of the skin, we have, what kind of national identity we have, so on and so forth, what kind of bodily gender identity we have, so on and so forth, right? So all these things, in a way, sort of by 1950s and 60s, particularly civil rights movement, LGBT movement, started using certain tenets of UDHR, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, And as a result, they became quite successful, influential movements on people, especially for people with the disabilities. So disability rights movement by 1960s took a different turn altogether in US, in UK, and some of the European states. As a result, in particularly in US, they started Center for Independent Living (CIL) at the University of California, Berkeley, by Ed Roberts and others. And in UK, they sort of by 1970s it became much more popular and what we call vibrant, especially by the mid of 1970s, with the organization like called Union of Physically Impaired Against Segregation by 1976. They came up with the revolutionary theory, what we have today in disability studies, a social model of disability. They said that disabled people are oppressed, or disabled people face exclusion, not that they have impairment, but they are systematically, structurally excluded by the society. That is to say, it is not because it is not that because of the impairment, because of the blindness, because of they have hard of hearing, they have mental illness or depression, that they face multifolded problems in the society. It is rather because of the society's resistance, reluctance, to accept disabled people what they are, to accommodate them with all sorts of needs that they require, and to recognize them, with their talents. So it's a systematic societal exclusion, oppression, that in a way sort of led to the like the uh, social model of disability, by especially flogged off by the movement called Union of Physically Impaired Against Segregation. It's a disabled organization movement. Rather, it was an organization run by the disabled people, and they distinguish between impairment and disability. They said impairment is biological, disability is sociological. So this was in UK. In US, they sort of compiled especially it was the movement was started by a group of physically impaired college students, the university students rather, who got admission at the University of California, Berkeley. And you'll be sort of shocked to know, even in US by 60s and 70s, particularly at the University of California. Today, it is one of the very premier universities in the world. It accommodated people with the physical impairment, people with the disabilities, not in the hostel, but in the university health center, university hospital. They were all given rooms in the university hospital to stay, because they have to be monitored 24 into 7 of their medical needs. And these people protested. And it was not that the reason cited by the university administration was not accepted by the young university students, disabled students. And they said that, no, it's an exclusion. What you have is actually inclusive exclusion. You gave us admission and now you are excluding us. It is rather segregation, they said. You are segregating us. It is because your hostels are not accessible. Hostels are not having, the accessibility ramp for the wheelchair to sort of move freely. You accommodate us in the hospital. And on a lighter note, if you observe, hospitals are very much accessible for people with the disabilities. It's a very sad thing also, because not that the hospitals, created ramps for people with the disabilities to move with a wheelchair, because the structure has to go. the structure, right? The structure, the people take the, people with the severe illness, people who meet with accident, they make them lie on the structure, they sort of push the structure, right? So it is because of that purpose, they made a wide ramp and all sorts of things. Even small hospital also, you see, it is very much accessible for people with disabilities. So they said that similarly, the hospital, the health center at the University of California, Berkeley was very much accessible for wheelchair. It is not that they thought about people getting admission, people coming to the hospital, disabled people coming to the hospital. It's just that, the people come with broken legs and all sorts of things. They have to be, taken into the hospital and provided all sorts of, facility treatments. Right, and these people protested this, and later university administration sort of heeded, listened to their demands, started making accommodations, started making certain amendments, certain renovations in the hostels to accommodate people with the disabilities, people with the different disabilities. By 1970s, to the end of 1970s, US came out with the Section 504, which in a way acknowledged accessibility and all sorts of requirements of people with disabilities. But nonetheless, till 1990, when the British government came out with the US government came out with the ADA, American with the Disabilities Act, the disabled people in US suffered all sorts of inaccessible issues, barriers, discriminations, so on and so forth. So that was the US, situation in US. In terms of situation in UK, by 1995 only, British government came out with the Disability Discrimination Act, DDA. And the same year, India also came out with the PWD Act, Persons with Disabilities Act. Why do I say all these things? Because, as I said it at the beginning of my talk, that disability studies emerged in 1990, to be more precise, not even early 1990s, to be 1990, because there was a very prominent scholar and professor who was a wheelchair user named Mike Oliver. He was a professor of sociology at the Open University, UK. By 1980s and 1990s, also in 2000. And Professor Oliver, by 1980s, got exposed to the wider disability rights movement that were actually in a way going on in entire UK, demanding accessibility, employment, rights, all sorts of things. He was a person with a wheelchair, someone who was a wheelchair user, was trying to internalize himself, was trying to, in a way, introspect his subject position. That he was a person with a wheelchair, and how he would sort of, how he was navigating the university, the social spaces, public spaces, family, friends, and others, how they were, in a way, understanding him. And as a result, he was also someone who was teaching sociology, like Faber, Durkheim, Goffman and others. So he was trying to think with the discourse of sociology, with the epistemological discourse of sociology, about his identity and the larger disability rights movement in UK. And he was also heavily influenced by the UPIAS, Union of Physically Impaired Against Segregation. That disability was sociological, impairment is biological, because impairment, someone having blindness is something we cannot, overcome. That we cannot sort of cure the blindness unless or until it is certain illness in terms of eye, ophthalmological illness, for which we have a very, very limited sort of medical intervention. Whereas disability is something which is socially produced, socially oppressed, socially created. Like the feminist who sort of said in the second wave that sex is biological, gender is sociological and cultural, right? So Oliver was trying to say, trying to sort of introspect his identity based on the discourse of disability rights movement, as well as the um, scholarship of sociology, particularly by Goffman. Then he came out with a book called Politics of Disablement by 1990. Right? And this book, was the pioneering book, although there were a couple of academic intervention before that, but I would still say 1990, the book that was published in 1990 by Oliver, Politics of Disablement, is a crucial intervention, because that officially academically started disability studies discourse, you know, and after which, you know, uh, even before that, what does Oliver say in the book? Oliver quite extensively talks about the sociology of disability. Like he primarily expanded what was a sort of a social cultural rhetoric flogged off by UPIAS, that impairment is biological, disability is sociological. In academic realm, that is, Oliver flogged up that such a rhetoric in academic realm, was trying to understand the discourse of disability, as in how the people with the able-bodied condition sort of excluded people with the disabilities, and how disability was socially produced, how disability needs to be understood as the sort of as an epistemological subject, rather than a physical illness, rather than a physical inability, right? So all sorts of things he was trying to sort of argue in his book. And after which, by 1990, mid 1990s, there were a couple of very significant epistemological interventions by people like Leonard Davis, Rosemary Garland Thompson, and Susan Wendell, right? David Mitchell, Sharon Snyder, that is primarily in the early 2000. But more importantly, Leonard Davis and Rosemary Garland Thompson, the two books which are innovative, or rather three books that are inevitable to understand the emergence of disability studies. One is Disability Studies Reader First Edition. It is quite, I'm always surprised by the period in which Disability Studies Reader was published, because when do we have reader? Reader is something, a collection of articles which actually in a way define the different areas in the particular field, written by eminent scholars who work in the particular area. So if you look at the feminist studies reader, post-colonial studies reader, or LGBTQIA plus studies, now that has been branched out in different areas. You have lesbian and studies reader, gay studies reader, all sorts of things. So, but any reader, if you look at it, it has a very well-researched, well thought out articles, collection of articles, which introduce you to different areas of the broader particular field, I said the first book was published in 1990. By 1995, Leonard Davis came out with the first edition of Disability Studies Reader. One of the significant intervention, I would say. Because 1 year before that, he wrote a book called Enforcing Disability Normalcy. That's also a very important book. The next year, he came out with another book, as I said, the one Disability Studies Reader, collection of articles. By 1997, Rosemary Garland Thompson, someone who was into literary studies, English studies broadly, like our discipline, came out with yet another significant book called Extraordinary Body, Figuring Physical Disability in American Literature and Culture. These three books are very crucial to understand the emergence of disability studies. Now we have 6th edition of Disability Studies Reader. Right? There were 6 editions that were published from 1995 onwards. The point I'm trying to make you understand is just see how the field got expanded so rapidly. Right? 5 years down the line, you have the book, the reader. After that, by early 2000, you have Handbook of Disability Studies. You know, there are so many collection of essays, anthologies in the field of disability studies. But what we need to understand is, you can say, sir, it is there in medical humanities also, it is there in health humanities also, which is recently, which is quite a recent young discipline. What's so great about it? It is so great because most of the scholars who started the discipline, who still work in the discipline, are people with the disabilities. Right? Even in US and in European countries, education was not available to people with the disabilities. Right? So all these people who sort of started the particular discipline, sustained the discipline, enriched the particular disability studies discipline, were people with the disabilities, or they had some members as disabled in their family. Leonard Davis' father was deaf person. He wrote a wonderful autobiography of living in being brought out by deaf parent. Right? And he made a decisive intervention, very significant intervention. He still makes it. You know, so the point I'm trying to sort of draw home, is that 1990s is a crucial decade in the field of disability studies, as that of other marginalized studies. You take any marginalized studies. I say it because academically, if you look at it, see, I told you, like I gave a quite elaborate sort of a background to make you understand how disability rights movement emerged, how it led to disability studies. And there was certain reason, because it began from 19th century onwards. In terms of academia, if you look at it, see, academia even today is quite reluctant to accommodate disability studies. It took almost several years, I would say 10 years of rigorous fighting at the University of Delhi to introduce disability study, disability and literature course in the English department. Right? So, because there is absolute academic ableism prevails in academia. It's not easy, quite easy, like we now you see you have a session in the 5-day FDP on disability studies. Right? It was not that so easy before that. Right? So the point is, why should I study disability studies? I'm not disabled. Why should I study? I'm not Dalit. Why should I read Dalit literature? This was the question raised in Indian academia, And also in European global northern academia, this was the question. Why is to introduce a course in disability studies? Particularly in English department, why to introduce disability literature course? Right? So the reason is quite simple, that all of us know cultural studies, right? But I don't know how far we understand cultural studies, because I teach cultural studies. I know its decisive impact as it has on all of us today. So much so that we freely, without prejudice, accommodate any discourse in English department. It's all because of cultural studies. Because when cultural studies began in 1964 at CCCS, Center for Contemporary Cultural Studies at the University of Birmingham, it was quite, in a way, Herculean task for Hoggard and Hall to introduce courses in cultural studies, because they were using bit of sociology, bit of anthropology, bit of political science, bit of philosophy, history, literary theory, so on and so forth, to theorize culture. And people from social science, they said that you're spoiling academia, you're making epistemic violence. You're creating violence in the name of, saying that culture is pluralistic. Culture is quite, elastic. You can sort of bend it. You can bring in theoretical intervention from any discipline and study culture. Today we admit people to work on plant culture, which is absolutely botany, right? But we accommodate. It's all because of culture studies. And so much so, we know very well the history of culture studies. Right? By 1988 or to the end of 1980s, it was forced to shut down. But by 1990s, the impact of culture studies was quite profusely felt. So much so that all the disciplines, all the marginalized disciplines, areas, accommodated, were rather accommodated in particularly in English department, particularly, in humanities departments. And so much so, by early 2000, even in India, you have at EFL University, Department of Cultural Studies was started. And who were the people who were appointed in cultural studies? People who were part of English studies, English faculty. And that's why I'm trying to say, I'm making this point that people who were into English department, English discipline, English studies in US and UK universities, who were disabled or who were having some members as disabled in their families, were quite open to accommodate the emergence of disability studies discourse. As a result, disability studies got expanded, because it was as you can see, I told you it began, the first book was authored by Professor Mike Oliver, who went on to offer a course in disability studies also. That's why we call him the father of disability studies, or who was the first professor of disability studies. But later point, people from English department took over disability studies. The credit actually goes to Leonard Davis. And Leonard Davis, Rosemary Garland Thompson, David Mitchell, Sharon Snyder. Today we have David Bolt at the Liverpool Hope University, UK. Right? And of course, we have Claire Barker and the host of others, Sally Tremaine and Tobin Seaber, right? Alice Hall, a lot of people, like Georgina Gleach, and so on and so forth. Robert McRuver, Thomas G. Causer, so many people. But by 1990s, people came forward by facing all sorts of opposition. And what did they invest in? What did they study? If you look at any marginalized studies, of course, they came from the political and social movements. But in academia, they counter challenge certain ideological position. If you look at feminist studies, it challenges patriarchy. Right? If you look at LGBT studies, it challenges heteronormativity, heterosexuality. If you look at Dalit studies, challenges Brahminism, that is caste system. Right? Like that, any marginalized studies, refugee studies, it challenges citizenship. Right? So disability studies also began to challenge two important ideological prepositions. One is normalcy, the ideology of normalcy. Second is ableism. And by 1990s, it only took up normalcy because Leonard Davis wrote the book Enforcing Normalcy. And Rosemary Garland Thompson, 1997, by taking a cue from Leonard Davis, tried to look at the image of normate. What is the image of normate? Right? So Davis says that in our everydayness, we use so much about so we use so much of words related to normalcy. We quite normally use the word normal, right? We say that I'm normal, um, a lot of words, a lot of contexts we use the word normal. What is so normal? What is so normal about the word normal? Or what is the, in cultural studies term, what is the materiality of the word normal or normalcy? That's where Rosemary Garland Thompson, in her book Extraordinary Body, quite extensively explores into the image of normate. Right? She says, what is the image of normate? In Western context, who can be said to be having or belonging to the image of normate? White, heterosexual, able-bodied, salaried, young, physically fit male can be called as normal. In Indian context, instead of white, you can put it as upper caste. And what is the percentage of people who are having having that normalcy, a normate identity? It may be less than 2%. But other 98% of people, one or the other way, they are all abnormal. Right? Because religiously they are marginalized, sexually they are marginalized, culturally they are marginalized, linguistically, regionally, economically, right? Caste wise, gender wise, body wise, ability wise, so on and so forth. The list is endless. But that's why I often say in my class also, the majority actually is the minorities are the majority. But the minorities have been created in such a way that one minority opposes the other minority. A disabled person is heterosexual. A heterosexual is able-bodied, right? And a lower caste person is ableistic. He is patriarchal. He opposes, he sort of harasses, abuses his own women folks, right? So that's the kind of a thing, right? So the normate image is something which is a mirage. We cannot really obtain or achieve or what you call get into that fold of normate. It's impossible. So by 1990s, the entire 1990s or from the mid 1990s to the late 1990s, disability studies, particularly scholars from literary studies, Leonard Davis, Rosemary Garland Thompson, invested heavily in exploring the idea of normalcy and the image of normate. By early 2000, you know, the scholarship sort of the field was quite appropriated by more and more scholars joining disability studies from English studies, right? David Mitchell, Sharon Snyder. You have this Otto Koischen was a very popular scholar in post-colonial studies. You know, you have Tobin Sieber, a lot of people. Susan Wendell from sociology, but then she wrote interesting articles in cultural disability studies. As a result, you know, they started sort of what we call particularly Paul Langmore, you know, he also sort of what we call looked at another term called stigma. It was in a way, he was influenced by Evan Goffman's very famous book called Stigma Notes on Spoiled Identity. He looked at how disabled people are stigmatized, right? So if you find a blind person, without even he telling, we think that he's a public property. You know, we'll ask all sorts of questions, you know, like how do you eat, how do you walk, how do you, proper, neatly dress, how do you work, how do you read? We have endless, countless questions, and the appearance of disability in the public sphere creates mixed emotions. You know, we are curious, you know, we are nervous, we are anxious, we are sympathetic, you know, we feel pity for the person. There are so many emotions that come to us when we see a disabled person. It all because of, you know, the discourse that has been fed in our minds, you know, of treating disabled people with certain stigma, right? And you know, Paul Langmore sort of quite extensively looks at the idea of stigma. And a lot of later period also, many people invested in exploring stigma. And stigma as theory is something that people from sociology would know. It's a very popular, widely used theory in all the marginalized studies, because all the marginalized identities suffer from a blanket stigmatization, right? I don't have to tell you, you know, like I don't have to tell anyone if I use a washroom, that's in that's in the public place. I'm told that you don't have to pay for anything. You know, people when they see me, they say that people in a way are quite reluctant to accept that I'm a faculty. Why? Because blind cannot be a faculty and faculty cannot be a blind. Yeah? I still remember when my first class at Aligarh Muslim University, when I entered, I think January 17 in 2017, at 8 o'clock, 8 a.m., the weather outside was almost at 3 degrees Celsius. Someone from Tamil Nadu was quite different for me. I was just shivering and entering into the classroom. Someone dropped me outside. The students were there and they said that they took my hand and escorted me to sit in the first row and said the teacher would come. You wait here. I said, I am the teacher. They said, no, you cannot be a teacher. The understanding is a blind cannot be a teacher and teacher cannot be a blind. Right? So that's the kind of a thing, because it's because of the appearance stigma. But 1 hour into my lecture, they felt that I'm the teacher, right? So it's something that, but it's not so when it comes to person with the able-bodied condition, right? So that's the appearance stigma, because Goffman talks about three sorts of stigma. Other two are not needed in disability studies context, but appearance stigma is something that's very important. And the third important investment, epistemological investment by 2000. How much time do I have? Okay. Right. So,
Sir, it's almost 7 o'clock, sir.
7 o'clock. So, how long I can speak?
Until 7:30 you can deliver, sir.
Until 7:30. Oh, great. That's great.
Yes, sir.
Wonderful.
Another half an hour we have, sir.
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you.
Right. So, the third thing is ableism. I mean, I said the two things, the first two things, but stigma is something that is integral to normalcy and ableism. Because I'll explain what is ableism, then you will understand how stigma is integral to ableism and normalcy. Ableism is an ideology like sexism, patriarchy, or racism. Ableism, disability studies quite extensively critiques the ideology of ableism, which believes that only able-bodied people are fit to live in this world. We quite freely, I would say, luxuriously use the word ability. You know, we often say, "I'm not disabled. I'm abled. I can walk. I'm not blind. I can see you better. I'm not deaf. I can hear you better." Ableism is something that is integral, I must say, to our way of thinking itself. We think, like feminists say, patriarchy is integral to our thinking. That is why, states like Tamil Nadu celebrated quite what you call extensively used the word, the most utterly problematic proverb, அடுப்பூதும் பெண்களுக்கு படிப்பதற்கு. Right? When women started reading, they said that ஏட்டு சுரக்காய் கறிக்கு உதவாது. Even now people say education is not needed. Kamaraj did not study. Right? But, that's what I'm saying. Similarly, ableism is quite integral to our thinking, behavior, our knowledge production, and the way, and I must say, our language itself is ableist. Our language itself is fraught with normalcy. Right? Like feminists say, language is patriarchal. Disability studies scholars say language is ableist. Because we ridicule disabled people, or we use disability as a negative metaphor to talk about the positivity of our ability. If I can see better, if I had to prove that I can see better, or I could see better, I'm using the word like, I'm not blind, I can see your face, I can see your face. Right? I'm not deaf, I can hear you. And if any institution is not functioning properly, we say it's a crippled institution, crippled government. Or if we say that he is having a schizophrenic mind, right? You might say, "Sir, what is there? I'm not insulting disabled people." Great, that's a good argument. But the point is, you don't have to explicitly say, you are insulting disabled people by using these terminologies. Because, I'm not saying all the people, we deliberately say it. No. We say it quite innately, naturally we say it. Because that's how we have been trained to say. That's how we have been, it has been, we have imbibed the language. Because the language itself is ableist. Right? If you look at in the quite colloquial terminologies in all the languages, they all ridicule lower caste people. Right? If you could closely think about the certain upper caste dialect, we have people talk about the language dialect. I strongly believe there is a caste dialect also in Tamil Nadu, in other states, everywhere in India. And you look at the upper caste dialect, it ridicules the Dalit. Right? And if you read Perumal Murugan's Seasons of the Palm, you will understand what I'm actually saying. Like the children, Dalit children, their names are not in a way called by the upper caste people. They are called as shorty, belly, stone deaf. What does it refer to? What does it say? It's in a way that's even more entangled, because we use disabled terminologies to ridicule Dalit, to nickname Dalit. Right? And so much so, those children are identified with such terminologies because of their bodily appearance. As if, like being short is problematic, as if being lean is having a lean body is problematic, right? And that's what I'm saying. It is integral. The disability studies argues that ableism was integral to knowledge production for thousands of years. That's the reason why Oedipus the king, Sophocles, Oedipus the king. We all celebrate. There's a very wonderful play like that. We all celebrate. Right? Oedipus is blinded by Sophocles, and after that, Oedipus says blindness is worse than death. If you die, it's like you will not be able to suffer. But if you live as a blind, as if blind people are suffering on daily basis, right? And there are a lot of examples in literature, also in Tirukkural, right? I often say, because what I'm saying is that we say Tirukkural is Neethi Ilakkiyam, moral literature. But what kind of morality we'll get it? It's an ableist morality. That's what I'm saying. கல்வி உடையார் கண்ணுடையார் கல்வி இல்லாதார் முகத்தில் இரண்டு புண்ணுடையார். That is, educated people are those who are having eyes. Uneducated people are not having eyes. Rather, they have certain wounds on their face. As if, so what is the drive home lesson from the particular couplet? Blind people are equal to uneducated fellows. That is why Tagore says, like, when he was having a conflict with Gandhi, he's saying that freedom without spirituality is like a blind man groping in the open air. You just throw 1 rupee coin in front of the blind person, totally blind person, ask him to take it. He will not be able to spot the coin. He will be groping his hand on the floor until he, gets the coin, right? So that's very problematic. That's what I'm saying. Most of the literature, if you reread it from disability studies point of view, you find that there's a very inherent, ableism in the knowledge production, not just in terms of literature alone, even the very idea of philosophy. You look at we celebrate Enlightenment philosophy, right? Because that's the bedrock of all the contemporary critical theory. If you look at Frankfurt School, it drew from Enlightenment philosophy. In fact, Habermas and others quite eloquently argue, even some of the interventions of postmodernism were influenced by Enlightenment thinking, right? But what did Enlightenment say about disability, right? I think, therefore I am. Very famous preposition by Descartes, right? Cartesian preposition. So what about people who do not think? That's why Lacan said, I don't think, therefore I'm not, right? And Locke, in his essay concerning human understanding, says that the idea of rational mind possessed by people who have able-bodied condition, and therefore only able-bodied people can be called as human being, because Locke was much more notorious in saying who can be called as a human. Humans are those who have the kind of ability to think. Those who cannot think cannot become a human. Therefore, people with a mental illness, people with irrational mind cannot become a human, right? A later point, a lot of people, the very idea of even Kant's problematic position also. They're all good in terms of philosophy. If you look at it vis-a-vis able-bodied condition, but if you look at it from a subject position of disability, that's why feminists say we need to rewrite the history. We need to, I must say, we need to revisit the entire knowledge production that has perpetuated certain epistemic violence on the disabled people, or the discourse of disability, because, as Virginia Woolf says, there are libraries of books about women, but sadly none of them was authored by women till the beginning of 20th century. Similarly, till 1990, there were so many literary works which represent disability. But sadly, most of the works were not authored by disabled people. Even, for example, Milton, who became blind at the age of 47. And after which he wrote Paradise Lost, magnificent works. But Milton, including Samson and Agonist, including his oft-quoted sonnet on his blindness, perpetuated the ableistic understanding. That's why Milton says, in his sonnet on his blindness, he says, "When I consider how my light is spent, a half my days in this dark world and white." In Samson and Agonist, he compares blind people with the deviant sort of devils, right? So, I mean, it's not that if blind people write it or disabled people write literature, it will be fine. No. What is needed is the sensibility of being blind, a sensibility of disability. So disability studies by 2000, by the decade of 2000, engaged with, uh, ableism quite extensively as opposed to normalcy. That is where people like Fiona Kumari Campbell, in her work, The Contours of Ableism, very brilliantly written book, talks about what is ableism, how ableism, as I said, integral to our thinking, right? Our integral to knowledge production, and so much so, there's so much of epistemic violence on disabled people, on what is disability. There are so many films. You look at a film like Kasi, it created, I would say, huge epistemic violence on the lives of people with the blindness, especially in 1990s and 2000. And a lot of people, particularly in 2000, the movie had huge impact, and so much so, whenever the able-bodied people encountered blind people, they always asked them, "Can you sing a song for me?" Right? And Vikram is not blind, right? It's a stigma. Even now in Niyanana program, Vijay TV, there are blind people into so many fields, but they brought people who are into singing, who are into mobile orchestra, made them as the kind of what you call the pawns, as tools for their TRB increase, right? So, the point I'm trying to make you understand is ableism was quite extensively investigated, critiqued by 2000, by the decade of 2000. And along with that, in literary studies, two important works actually were produced. One is Narrative Processes by David Mitchell and Sharon Snyder in the year 2001. And in 2007, Otto Koischen, whose name I mentioned a while ago, someone who was a very brilliant scholar in post-colonial studies, wrote only one book in the field of disability studies, that is Aesthetic Nervousness. Due to paucity of time, I don't want to go into what is there in these two texts, but I just want to make you understand that these two works officially inaugurated literary disability studies, a branch of disability studies. Because by 2000, again, a very important decade in the field of disability studies, because disability studies got expanded into different branches. We started having cultural disability studies. We started having, literary disability studies. We started having educational disability studies, and we started having media and disability studies. So many areas, and particularly David Mitchell and Sharon Snyder made phenomenal contribution in the particular decade, 2000. They wrote minimum 4 books, I think 3 to 4 books. They talked about disability culture. They talked about disability literature. They talked about biopolitics of disability, and Sally Tremaine wrote Foucault on disability studies, uh, Foucault on feminist disability studies. There's another book. Like that, there are so many books were written, by 2000. As a result, we started also having feminist disability or feminist disabled feminism by Rosemary Garland Thompson, Susan Wendell, and others. Particularly Rosemary Garland Thompson's important essay, Feminist Disability Studies. Brilliantly written essay, one of the very inaugural essays that sort of introduced feminist disability studies. So, by 2010, the previous decade, post disability studies branched out into much more advanced level. That's when we started having disability aesthetics, um, uh, this one meta narrative of disability, meta narrative of blindness, right? Aesthetic blindness, like these are certain words, Also, like post colonial fiction and disability, Club is a brilliantly written one. Disability and modern fiction, like that, and disabled romanticism, right? Like the romantic poets were analyzed from the viewpoint of disability studies, right? And 2014, brilliantly written essay by Don Goodley et al., Don Goodley and others, called Post-Human Disability Studies, right? So you see in all these, like disability, like all these interventions, discourses, what you can actually observe is in the academic, in the wider academic context, particularly cultural studies was in peak, especially in the previous decade. Many universities started offering cultural studies course. In fact, some of the universities started renaming their English department as cultural studies. Punjab University renamed cultural studies, and you have Christ University renamed, like started department as English and cultural studies, right? And also like English literature, English department was renamed as English studies because they had problem with cultural studies, because cultural studies would provide a different thing altogether, because it's like a mixture of everything, right? What you need to observe is how disability studies embraced, different I would say discourses. For example, post-humanism. When post-humanism came up, disability studies embraced it. It introduced a thing, like post-human disability studies, right? And when popular culture emerged, it introduced popular culture in disability studies, popular fiction in disability studies. When post-colonialism emerged, it introduced post-colonialism and disability studies. When the epistemology of Global South began, we have a book called Disability Studies in Global South, something like that, right? So when cultural studies came up, we started having cultural disability studies, right? Similarly, we have like disability illness is also being studied in disability studies. There are and climate crisis and disability studies, right? There's so many things are being accommodated at present. Disability studies engages with graphic narratives. Disability studies engages with disability engages with the blogs, right? Online blogs, especially this digital narratives, like digital humanities, right? Disability studies engages with all sorts of, intervention, and particularly, scholars who work with me, they look at disability life writing, disability representation in regional literature, cinema. Tamil cinema is such a huge area, but it has not been sort of explored with the epistemology of disability studies. Similarly, we have huge area that remain to be unexplored. There's so much of things to be explored, especially in the regional context. So in the previous decade, disability studies was brought into global south. In this decade, we are trying to localize disability studies. We are trying to use disability studies to sort of engage with our culture, our literature, our cinema, our society, our folklore. There are people who are working on, like disability representation in folklore, which is much more problematic, right? So all these things, yeah, we are looking at it, and if you guys are interested, you can explore these things, right? So I hope sort of done something, and we have another 15 minutes. Yeah, probably we can. I can tell you about some more things in terms of what we do, what has happened in Indian context, right? Uh, in Indian context, if you look at it, disability studies is even now is a very, very young discipline, because uh, as in the case of other terrains, in the terrain of academia also, we are very much behind, you know. But more so in the case of disability studies, because as I said, that in global northern countries itself, it took several decades for people to sort of invest in disability studies because of lack of education. In Indian context, given now, if you look at the reason why disability studies is still an young discipline, especially it really lacks disabled people getting into it, disabled people working in the field, because the education of the disabled people is very less. In the school education itself, we have inclusive education. Earlier, we do have even today a special education, but inclusive education is entirely the way in which it is practiced. It's not really doing any sort of empowerment to the disabled children. That's a different point of discussion, in the field of education and disability studies. But in the higher education, the data say that only 0.56% of disabled people get into higher education. In fact, the literacy rate of disabled people itself is 50%. Another 50% of disabled people are not literate. The national average is 74.5%, right? Among the able-bodied people, and there is a huge amount of dropout. So what happened is, only in early 2000, disability studies very, very scarcely sort of entered into academia. It was started by scholar Anita Gai, uh, and after that, people like Renu Gupta, like. And others who actually joined, you have this Nilika Mehrotra, Nandini Ghosh, Shilpa Anand, right? And others, but in early 2000, when Anita Gai sort of introduced disability studies, disembodied form, that was the first book in 2004. uh, uh, Before that, Anita Gai, who's no more now, who made a very decisive contribution in the field of disability studies in India, she was a wheelchair user. She was a person with multiple sort of physical conditions, but she sort of was so invested in feminism in India. She was one of the scholars who was instrumental in introducing feminist discourse in Indian context, along with other able-bodied women. But when she came across Rosemary Garland Thompson, Susan Wendell, and their works on disabled feminism, she, being a disabled woman, when she talked about the idea of disabled feminism, she was not accepted. by able-bodied women. You see, that's why I said, you know, the minority is the majority, but minorities do not have any sort of unity. They cannot have. That's how we have been structured, right? Uh, so Anita Gai, when she sort of talked about, the rights of disabled women, how disabled women are oppressed by both ableism and patriarchy. She talked about ableist patriarchy, multiple oppression. Also, if a woman, disabled woman, happens to be a Dalit, she faces, like casteism, ableism, and patriarchy, three-folded oppression, right? She was not included. Then she came out of feminist movement. She wrote Indian feminism and excluded agenda of ableism, right? An article how Indian feminism is an excluded agenda, which does not include disabled women, trans women, right? Dalit women, all sorts of things. Then that is quite natural. That's why we have so many branches of feminism. We don't have single feminism. We have multiple feminisms. And after that, like Anita Gai started getting into activism and other activism, started writing more about disabilities. He started reading more of disability studies, discourse in the global north. She wrote a book in 2013 as Rethinking Disability in India. Very wonderful book. And a couple of, along with Renu Adlaga, I said Renu Gupta, but it's Renu Adlaga. Like she also came out with the disability studies in India, like local realities and global situation. And there are 4 books that were authored that were published as anthologies on disability, particularly in disability studies in India. One is by Renu Adlaga, came out with the first anthology, Disability Studies in India. Second is by Nandini Ghosh, Interrogating Disability in India. She's again a person who is identified as dwarf. She works in the Institute of Development Studies at Kolkata. Third is actually by Anita Gai, Disability in South Asia, Knowledge and Experience. And the fourth is by Niliga Mehrotra, Disability Studies in India. So these are certain 4 anthologies came out in Indian context, right? So, yeah. Courses, when did we start offering courses in disability studies? By the time I offered the course called Disability Studies and Literature in 2017 at Aligarh Muslim University, there weren't, like I would say, there were very, very, very 1 or 2 courses. To my knowledge, there was one course offered by Professor Anil Kumar Aneja at the University of Delhi for MPhil students. At MA level, there was no course. I must, in a way, thank the Department of English, Aligarh Muslim University. They were quite accommodating. They were quite encouraging me to teach disability studies. I taught disability studies 2 years there. And after I moved to CUTN, I've been teaching disability studies. Now I renamed the course as Literary and Cultural Disability Studies, right? And now, like today, a lot of people came into disability studies, but they don't have much awareness. They don't have much knowledge. They still use the terms like differently abled, Why we shouldn't use the word term differently abled or any sort of euphemistic terminologies is that in disability studies, the scholars say there are 2 sorts of terminologies we can use. One is person first terminology. Second is disability first terminology. Our the law that we enacted both in 2016 and in 1995, it says person first, person with a disability. So first they are person, then they are disabled. So this is widely preferred even by United Nations, because United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, brought out in the year 2006, acknowledges person first. Second is disability first. we can say disabled person, blind person, deaf person, because it is based on social model of disability. See, I am a blind, or I am disabled. I would continue to be disabled as long as the society poses barriers, you know, poses impediments, poses or imposes certain sociological oppression upon me, or oppresses me sociologically, culturally. And I'm not denying the fact that I have an impairment. Yes, there is an impairment. Like, Dalits, when they were called as Harijan by Gandhi, they opposed it because the children of God were not allowed to enter into the temple. They said, what is the fun in calling us Harijan when we were not allowed to enter into the temple, right? And similarly, like disabled people, when they were called as Divyangjan, divine-bodied people, many disability rights movement or people, disability advocates opposed it because we are primarily human, you know. By calling us like divine-bodied people, you are depriving our human rights, right? Many disabled people, even now, they beg on the streets. They are not given proper facilities. Then what is the point in calling them differently abled? We also call them specially abled, as if they have a special ability, right? Uh, if that is really true, why again thousands of people beg on the streets with the wheelchair, with blindness? They have special ability, right? They have different ability. These are certain, I say these are linguistic sanitizers, or like these are linguistic perfumes. We just sort of sprinkle it in our language, so that we are trying to so that the language will be sanitized. Instead of calling them blind or disabled, if you call them differently able, especially able, the language will be sanitized, isn't it? So that's why they oppose it in disability studies context, discourse. They say that either you can call person with a disability, or you can call disabled person, right? So in Indian context, at present, as I said, we are quite extensively working on disability life writing, and we are encouraging a lot of disabled people to write their autobiographies. But the problem is, it's something that currently I face. One of my students translated, a book written by a disabled woman, a wheelchair person in Kerala. It was written in Malayalam. He translated into English. And I wrote introduction, we got forward and everything. We approached certain publishers. They are not, interested to publish it. They're quite reluctant. This is the problem, right? So because, that's the reason why, if you look at any disability autobiographies, all the autobiographies invariably end with certain overcoming narratives. Disabled people are seen as role models. That's very problematic. And they're often told that these people are successful because of divine intervention. See, what about the person who really worked hard? Professor Madan Kumar Anna would know me very well. I used to go to library after my class, return hostel at 9 o'clock in the night at Pondicherry University, 850 acres, by using my stick. What about the hard work I put? If you simply say it's because of the God, I studied well. Or people say because of his miraculous power, extraordinary power, he has achieved this. Then what about my hard work? What about the kind of effort that I put? So by doing so, we are trying to deprive the kind of hard work put by the disabled people. We say that someone became IAS, he got 350th rank or 250th rank because he has got extraordinary power. He has got a miraculous power. I often say in my class, see, I get into the class, even now I'm delivering the talk without anything in my hand. It is not that I'm, doing some circus or I have a 1 TB Google Drive in my mind. It is by practice. It is not a heroism. It is rather a compulsion that I have trained myself to deliver talks, deliver lectures without anything in my hand because I cannot see. As simple as that. right? If you look at the, people who do steno typing, they type so fast. You look at people who work with the judges, right? Can we say those people are differently abled people? They don't even look at the keyboard. It's because of practice, right? So, that's what I'm saying. I know my friend, who works in Karur Collectorate. He is a person with the blindness. He doesn't use smartphone much. He knows 500 mobile phone numbers by heart. Can we say he is a superhuman being? Not like that. He doesn't know how to use smartphone because if he knows it, next moment he will start forgetting one by one. That's how it is, right? So the point is, having these terminologies are not really changing the condition of existence. That's why I say, see, whether you call me blind, whether you call me differently able, specially able, gifted, godchild, I continue to be the same. My situation continued to be the same. What would uplift me? The education would uplift me. What would uplift me? The economic empowerment would uplift the disabled people. So that's why disability studies says that there's a lot of discussion on the idea of like terminologies, and of course it will make certain psychological changes. See, okay, Tamil Nadu people say disabled people as மாற்றுத்திறனாளிகள், differently abled people. Good. Instead of calling them Kurudan, Sevudan, and Mudavan, you call them as மாற்றுத்திறனாளி. That's a very good thing. Has it uplifted disabled people? What is needed? What is needed is wider intervention in terms of providing them education, wider acceptance. Probably I'll end with this. See, whether we know it or not, we are excluding hearing impaired people from our everydayness. In America, by 1990, deaf people came together and staged a huge protest, said that they are linguistic minorities, right? Because, we don't know Chinese, let's assume. We don't know Japanese. Do we call Chinese fellows, Japanese fellows as deaf people? We don't do it. Similarly, we don't know sign language. And why do we call deaf people as disabled? That's why they say, that's what they say. Just because you don't know my language, you call me, disabled or deaf. So let's assume that you get into a deaf school where everyone is deaf. They cannot hear. They don't use our oral language or what they call hearing language. We are all hearing people for them. They don't use our language. You need to use sign, SIGN, sign language to talk to them. There we will be disabled, right? So when you get into a blind school where everyone is blind, and you are the only person who is sighted. Like you see H.G. Wells' Country of the Blind. You read that story, you'll understand. Where everyone is blind, you find that you are disabled. You are actually, like disabled. They are all fine. It's because the able-bodied people are majority, or the hearing people are majority. We are excluding deaf people. We make our children learn Chinese, Japanese, Korean. They may not even get to meet Chinese people in their life. But we make them learn all sorts of languages which are useless. Unless or until we put any language into practice. Right? But deaf people are something whom we meet on daily basis. Right? And to me, all the Tahsildar office, government office should have sign language interpreter to communicate to deaf people because they are being cheated. And they are not given proper representation in education, in employment as per PWD reservation. Right? That is why in deaf studies, there is something called the deaf studies. Now disability studies, as I told you, has branched out into different things. We have crib theory, deaf studies, blind studies, autistic studies. People with autism, they also started talking about their rights. Right? All right, so I'll stop it here. Thank you very much. I will definitely take up the questions. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thanks for enlightening session. Dear participants, it's time for your questions. Kindly raise your questions in the chat box, or you can unmute yourself and directly address the speaker. There is sir, Professor N. Aldas.
Mr. Madan,
Yes, sir.
first of all, I appreciate the speaker today. Mm. At one point of time, he said that we should not call those people disabled.
Yeah.
I would like to.
No, we have
I
to
would
call
like-
them as disabled only. Yeah.
Oh, I see. Mhm. Okay. That's why I was wondering why we should not call them as disabled people.
No, I
Or
said
special.
we use terminologies, euphemisms like differently able, specially able,
Ah.
gifted. Those terminologies do not, in a way, uplift disabled people, do not do any service other than having some psychological changes among the able-bodied people.
Okay.
Materially, they do not actually uplift the disabled people.
Okay.
Whether, someone who is begging on the street, who is a disabled person, if we call them,
Yes.
okay, you are a divine-bodied person, you are a differently abled. He is not differently able. That's why he's begging on the street.
Okay.
That's my argument. Like it may be, like a little, contrary, but I think that's what the reality is.
Okay.
Because lots and lots of people, disabled people, they do not get adequate facilities. The amount paid by the Tamil Nadu government at present is 1,500 rupees to a disabled person. 90%, 80% or 90% of disabled people belong to poor family, very, very lower economic families, where their parents are all coolie, daily wages. And, just like try and understand, sir, that let's say that I'm a very, poor person. I need to go to work every day. Only then I can take care of my disabled child who requires utmost attention. I mean, is 1,500 or 2,000? I'm not even saying Tamil Nadu government. I'm actually also representative of the government. I'm saying overall in India, right? I was in Poland. They have social security. In Indian rupees, they receive per month almost 20,000, 30,000 rupees. They are also given houses. Right? So now I think such interventions, I understand our economic condition is very low, both the state and central government economic condition, and we have a huge amount of population. That's also, our population is so high. And as per 2011 census, we got 2.21 million disabled people out there. I think it is multifolded. I think at present it will be more than 20 million, disabled people will be there. Right? But how to address such issues? Of course, we can offer a course on disability studies. We have to academically engage with all these things. But what is needed in the wider level is awareness. And in the specific level to disabled people, they don't need terminology. See, there are so many terminology. That's why I always wonder, it is only the disabled people who have many terminologies. Disabled, differently able, visually challenged, physically impaired, Divyang, specially able, gifted. What is it going to make? What kind of change it's going to make in the lives of disabled people? Nothing. We are only sanitizing the language. And we feel good to call these terms. We use these terms. Okay, he's great. He's differently abled. But next, after that, nothing. It is only for the able-bodied people to feel good we have these terminologies. But in a practical level, these terminologies, as I said, it might obviously it is creating certain psychological impact. Very true. After like Matutranali, the term was introduced by late Chief Minister Kalaignar Karunanidhi. It was a wonderful intervention. But in Tamil Nadu, we are far better, I must say. We have 1,500 blind people as teachers in the school, around 200, 300 blind people as college teachers. In other states, it's not so. There are a lot more things, even the basic requirement itself. But even in Tamil Nadu, we have a lot of issues to be addressed. That's a different thing. When we compare our state with other countries, let's say Poland or Germany or US, lot more things to be done. We are working with the government very closely. We will be bringing up some more practical changes, in terms of providing them wider education, employment opportunities, skill training, and all these things.
Okay, sir. But no, so far I was under impression it was quite offensive and abusive to use the terms like deaf and dumb or blind. But now you made me understand why these terms have been objected by you. As you said rightly,
yeah, so it's academically, I'm saying in terms of academically, so because academia, if you go look at it in terms of disability epistemology, these terms are problematic. But socially, it is okay. I'm saying socially because instead of calling them Kurudan, Sevudan, and Mudavan, and all these things, Matutranali, I must say, is a decent terminology.
Yes, sir.
And our empowerment should not stop with calling them Matutranali.
Yes. I do agree with you. Economic empowerment, educational empowerment alone can free them from all these terms. Yes. Okay. I do agree with you. Yes. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir, for raising the question.
Yes.
So there is a question in the chat box.
Yeah.
Sir, I have an intention to do my research to explore vulnerability as strength in fantasy literature, focusing disabled character written by disability author. What is your opinion on that?
Yeah, it's a good thing, like especially fantasy comics, the last year, one of my students in masters, she did a project with me on thriller films in Tamil. Films belonging to thriller genres in Tamil language. How those films depict blindness, blind characters, like we have Nitric and Psycho and other things. Similarly, I guess fantasy is a good thing. To look at the idea of vulnerability, how fantasy literature engages with the vulnerability. It's very true, because like vulnerability again, one of the critical categories at present taken up by academia, like vulnerability, precarity, disposability, those terminologies. Obviously, there are a lot of interventions. There are a lot of theories on vulnerability. It's good to engage. To my knowledge, the research in that area is very less. It's good area to explore.
Thank you, Professor Valli, for raising the question. Thank you, sir.
Thank
Dear
you, sir.
participants,
Sir,
are there any questions to be asked?
Yeah, tell me, ma'am. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Sir, my guide asked me how you can give vulnerability as strength, because I too belong to the same category, disabled character. So she only gave an idea to do research on disability studies. So the sister asked me how you can bring out vulnerability as strength. I told the sister,
it's not
for
a
me,
strength. It's really not a strength, because fantasy literature engages with vulnerability or represents vulnerability in a different light altogether. Because we need to really critically engage with vulnerability as to understand the politics of such a representation.
yes. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, madam. Sir, there is a question from Professor Saravanan.
Yeah.
How does disability studies intersect with the themes we have discussed earlier this week, like medical humanities and post-humanism?
It's a good question. If you have listened to my lectures toward the end of the last, to the end of my lecture, I was hinting at how disability studies, especially by 2014, embraced posthumanism, and people like Don Goodley came out with the article like Posthuman Disability Studies and Disability and Posthumanism. There are a lot of works, but the intersections, like in terms of medical humanities, particularly illness, the illness narratives. Saad Al-Samri, a very prominent scholar in disability studies, particularly in illness narratives, in terms of using disability. A good friend of mine also from University of Gulf University of Science and Technology, in Kuwait. She engages, she sort of does autoethnographic research. Autoethnography, as in she is a person with a multiple sclerosis. What does multiple sclerosis do is that it tries to slowly make your body vulnerable. On a one fine day, you might feel that you will not be able to move your one leg, and slowly the numbness spreads to other leg, and gradually you'll find one or the other things, like your body gradually stops to react. Medical humanities looks at the doctor patient relationship, right? Particularly this in disability studies context, we differentiate between disability and disease, disease and illness. We say that disability is something which is quite concrete. Blindness is not a disease. That's what the colonialism did a huge epistemic damage by looking at blindness as a disease. But blindness is certainly not a disease, it's a disability. Blindness is not illness, because illness is something which is communicable and non-communicable, right? And in the case of disease, which is quite temporary, right? It will definitely end, right? Flu or something, right? Whatever. But in the case of illness, we have two things. One is chronic illness, second is temporary illness. HIV, multiple sclerosis, cancer, muscular dystrophy, these are all illness. They are not disability. But the end result of having such chronic illness is disability. I guess you get the point. Medical humanities engages with the illness, not disability. We need to understand. See, I don't have to go to the doctor often because I'm a blind person, right? And I might have to go to the doctor often if I have HIV, if I have cancer, if I have multiple sclerosis, muscular dystrophy, and others. And therefore, my relationship with the doctor, I must say, is quite less. But medical disability studies engages with medical humanities to the extent that illness becoming disability. People like Saad Al-Samri, even to that matter, you have this Audre Lorde, who introduced womanism. She wrote a autobiography, which we call it as biomythography. It belongs to that particular journal called Biomythography, which Saad Al-Samri also later used to that particular genre to wrote her autobiography called Notes on the Flesh. But Audre Lorde wrote a cancer journal, his autobiography, in the form of biomythography. That is the illness narrative. Now we are looking at illness narratives as also disability because, as I said, illness narratives talks about illness becoming disability, the chronic illness. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Dear participants, are there any questions to be asked? We have to move on to the valedictory address. So there is one more question, sir.
Yeah.
What are the theories we can use in a research on the writing by persons with disabilities?
There's a book called Disability Theories written by Tobin Sieber. You can refer to the book. There's also another book called Crip Theory by Robert McCruver. You can refer to those two books. There are so many theories. We have a biopolitical theory. As I said, the two theories, normalcy, ableism, and narrative processes, aesthetic nervousness. There are so many things, you know. What
Yes,
we
sir.
want to look at it, as I said, it's disability studies is no longer a smaller field. It's a huge one. There's so many areas in disability studies we engage with. It all depends upon what you want to really work on.
Yes, sir. Sir, there is one more interesting question.
Yeah.
Sir, women who can't give birth to child will come under disability?
Certainly not. Certainly not. I had the same sort of a question when I was at Guwahati, in Guwahati last year at Disability Studies Conference. I strongly objected to it because, see, infertility is not disability. Let us understand it. Disability, something which you know. There are three levels of disability: physical, cognitive, sensorial. Infertility cannot be called as disability because the reason is, I do understand women who are infertile face a lot of social stigma, like we see in One Part Woman, right? But that is not disability. People say Dalit identity is also disability. That's very problematic. No, that's a social disability. What we are talking about is physical disability, like cognitive disability, sensorial disability. You can say, sir, just now you talked about social model of disability. Now you're saying it's not social disability. I said social model of disability in the context of disabled people who are being socially oppressed. I'm not talking about Dalit or poor people or LGBT people or women with infertility who are being socially oppressed. No, there's a separate thing that is coming up in terms of infertility studies, right? So I think certainly it's not disability.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. So with your permission, shall we close the session, sir? We'll move on to the valedictory session.
Sure. Thank you.
Yes. So let me now invite Dr. J. Mary Janab, Head, Department of English, Shift to Sacred College, to deliver the valedictory address. We welcome you, madam.
Am I audible, sir?
Yes, madam. Kindly proceed.
Respected resource person of the day, respected head of the department, Mr. N. Aruldas, the faculty, and my a very pleasant good evening to one and all. As we come to the valedictory session on interdisciplinary research in English language and literature, organized by the Department of English, Sacred Heart College, Tirupattur, it is with immense pride and gratitude that I stand before you on this historic occasion of our Platinum Jubilee year. This program has truly been a celebration of ideas, dialogue, and discovery. Over the past week, we have witnessed how English language and literature transcend disciplinary boundaries and interact meaningfully with fields such as digital humanities, environmental studies, medical humanities, and disability studies. The sessions have reminded us that interdisciplinary research is no longer optional, but essential in responding to the complex intellectual and social challenges of our time. We are privileged to learn from our eminent resource persons whose scholarly insights, research experience, and thought provoking discussions have inspired us to rethink traditional approaches to research and pedagogy. Their contributions have not only expanded our academic horizons, but also motivated us to pursue innovative, inclusive, and socially relevant research. This FDP has also provided a valuable platform for collaboration, bringing together scholars from diverse institutions and backgrounds. The active participations, insightful questions, and shared reflections of the participants have made this program vibrant and intellectually stimulating. On this momentous occasion of 75 years of Sacred Heart College, the program stands as a testimony to the institution's enduring commitment to academic excellence, research innovation, and holistic education. It reflects the visionary legacy of our founders and the continued dedication of our faculty to nurture critical thinkers and responsible scholars. I would like to express a heartfelt gratitude to the college management for their constant support to our principal, Reverend Dr. D. Maria Anthony Raj, and the additional principal, Reverend Dr. Theophil Anand, for their encouragement and tireless efforts in organizing this program. A special word of appreciation is due to the organizing secretaries, Mr. V. Madan Kumar and Mr. Saravanan, whose behind the screens work, seen the details of the program and ensured the smooth conduct of the sessions. We are all indebted to the overwhelming support of our resource persons, starting with Dr. N. Lovejoy and Dr. K. Maria Arikaraj, Dr. Jehosen Jerish, Dr. Satyaraj Venkateshan, especially the resource person of today, Dr. B. Bhupati. Thank you, dear resource persons, for your support. Next, I would like to express my heartfelt thanks to all the participants and wishing you all the best for your future endeavors. As we conclude this faculty development program, let us carry forward the spirit of interdisciplinary inquiry, collaborative research, and academic excellence. May the insights gained here translate into impactful research, innovative teaching practices, and meaningful contribution to the society. With these words, I declare this 1 week faculty development program successfully concluded. Thank you all and wishing everyone continued academic growth and success. Thank you.
Thank you very much, madam. Dear participants, before closing the session, there are a few important instructions to be communicated. I request Professor Saravanan to inform the same. Sir?
Yes, sir. Good evening, dear participants. Now for the information you are all been waiting for. So I'm going to share the feedback link of day 5. This one will be consolidated along with other day feedback form. And sorry. And it will be used for the certification process. Please ensure your name and institutional details are correct, as they will be automatically printed on your e-certificates. Certificates will be processed and sent in the WhatsApp group or to your registered mail IDs if you prefer within the 15 working days, next 15 working days. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Saravanan, sir. So once again, I sincerely thank the management, heads of the department, faculty members, and participants across the nation wholeheartedly for your constant support in successfully conducting the event. So once again, I express my sincere thanks to each and everyone. A special word of thanks to Mr. Saravanan, who assisted me in the smooth conduct of the event. So thank you, dear all. Thank you very much.
Yes, Mr. Madan, before you conclude,
Yes, sir.
David, I would like to thank and appreciate both of you,
Yes, sir.
you and Mr. Saravanan, for organizing such a wonderful 5-day program, which has been really very, very educative, erudite, and quite scholarly. I do agree with everyone that it would certainly result in the benefit of all the participants from all over the country. Okay, keep doing such wonderful things in the future also. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for your support, sir. Thank you. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you, Madam Sir. So the participants meeting link will be open for another 5 to 10 minutes. You can post your feedback. Fill the feedback form carefully as it will be processed for the certification. We request you to fill it carefully once again. Thank you.